The Mekong, the ongoing story of an untamable giant. Nearly 5,000 kilometers long, the Mekong is one of the longest rivers in the world. It flows through 6 Asian countries. On its banks live more than 70 million people from 100 different ethnic groups. All these people are closely bound to this river and to the land it waters, as well as to their own ancient traditions. Where it emerges from the glaciers in Tibet, it's called the Tsa Chu, water of the rocks. And then in China, it becomes the Langkangjiang, the turbulent river. Near the foothills of the Golden Triangle highlands, the Laotians and the Thais call it the Mai Nam Kong, the mother of all rivers. Our journey begins in Laos, in the region of Sayaburi. Here the river has already traveled nearly 2/3 of its way from its source in the Himalayas towards the sea. So one might think that the river would now be calm. But no, nothing of the sort. Even though the water level is at its lowest in this season, the river still retains a considerable hydrological potential. It maintains its force and power throughout its entire descent towards the China Sea.
I live in Ban Mong. I make small fishing boats for a living. I've been at this job for 6 or 7 years now. When I make a boat, I need a few days to construct the hull, and then 2 more days to paint it. As soon as the job is done, I put the boat up for sale. That's how I make my living and support my family. For me, it makes no difference if the water is high or low. I can work all year long.
The story of the Mekong is lost in the mists of time. The first humans to arrive in Asia undoubtedly halted on the river's banks. But sailing on the Mekong is difficult, and the river has never been a means of communication. Along its banks, each separate community developed its own traditions and unique techniques that for some still survive today.
I took these wood chips from my friend who makes boats and scattered them round my field to keep the soil moist during the day.
In 1540, the Portuguese explorer Antonio de Faria was the first European to reach the banks of the Mekong. A map of 1563 exists, but it's very vague about the source and the course of the river. In 1866, the French explorers Ernest Doudard de Lagrée and Francis Garnier traveled up the river as far as Yunnan. Their expedition was only partially successful, as rapids upstream make navigation impossible. It was not until 1900 that the Mekong's source was discovered in Tibet by the Russian Pyotr Kozlov.
The Mekong's water goes right up to there. It begins flooding in July, so I have to go by motorboat to work in another field. The waters continue rising through September and October, flooding all the fields. It's not till December that the Mekong goes down. I can't work the fields until then. With land like this, I can harvest twice a year. This is my second harvest. I plant dill, lettuce, river spinach, chives, all sorts of vegetables. Every year I plant the same thing, and every morning I take my vegetables to market to sell them. I even have enough for my family. I've just finished planting chives and dill. I start planting in December. I plant the cucumbers first, then the rest of the vegetables. When the Mekong floods, it deposits sand and other alluvium that mix in with the soil. So the soil gets fertilized and becomes excellent for growing crops. When the water recedes, I can farm this rich soil. The ground is so fertile that we don't even need fertilizer or any chemical products to grow vegetables. Look, they're lovely, you see?
Over a distance of 900 kilometers, the Mekong crosses Laos from north to south. And thanks to the river, Laos is heavily forested. It ranks among the top 20 countries in the world for relative forest cover. But with 90% jungle-covered mountains, there is very little land left to provide food for the country's 7 million inhabitants. This is why Laos has never been a rich country. The mighty Mekong is not navigable there, and the jungle prevents the building of roads. Nevertheless, a number of cities like Vientiane, Luang Prabang and Pak Se have prospered thanks to the river and its environment.
I'm getting my equipment ready to go into the forest. I cut this inner tube so I can later attach my basket to my cane.
Totally landlocked, Laos trades only with its neighbors. It is thus very vulnerable to local economic risks. On the other hand, its minimal commercial activity shields it from economic crises. But this was not always the case. Laos was formerly part of the Khmer Empire, which was composed of Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and part of Vietnam. The empire's power was based on the Mekong and the forests surrounding it. The river provided fish, and the forest produced plants and edible insects. There are more than 80 species eaten by Laotians.
I use this basket to collect ant eggs. I knock on the bamboo to make them fall inside. As soon as they've fallen, I sprinkle flour in them so they don't bite me. I get up at the crack of dawn and collect ant eggs in the forest. There are a lot at this time of year, and most of the eggs are in large nests, sometimes in smaller ones. If I get up late, other people will have already collected them before I get there.
Insects are essential in Laotian cuisine. They compensate for the lack of meat and provide some protein. They also go very well with many local plants, vegetables, and aromatic herbs.
It's a real godsend to have found these eggs. I'll fry them up or put them in a soup, or maybe just add them to an omelette.
The consumption of certain insect pests also plays a phytosanitary role. It limits the use of insecticides. Eating cockchafers reduces the damage they do to coconut and banana trees. And eating locusts means that they can't attack the rice paddies.
Laotians adore these eggs. They love eating them. They even eat them raw.
While being a meat substitute in rural areas, certain insects are also very much sought after. In towns, they're often sold in the markets, sometimes at a very high price. Nevertheless, insects enjoy a great success, a manner that is starting to inspire some Western chefs. Rice is essential in Asia. It constitutes a staple food for hundreds of millions of people. Directly or indirectly, it's the main source of employment and income for rural populations. The rice baskets used by Laotians and Thais are made all over Laos. Once the sticky rice is cooked, these baskets can store it for several days. Because it can be eaten with the hands, this particular rice was originally for the common people. Today, it's a reference in Thai and Laotian cuisine and is found in most dishes.
I make these baskets in several different shapes and sizes, from the smallest to the largest. Before I start making them, I go to the forest to collect bamboo. I scrape it, then cut it into thin strips that I weave. It takes me 1 day to make a small basket. Larger ones take 2 days to finish. When finished, the basket is used to hold rice and keep it hot. Laotians and Thais use these rice baskets constantly. When I finish them, they will be sold by local shopkeepers.
Some large towns in Asia built their fortunes on trade along the silk and spice routes. And travelers and caravans taking these routes brought knowledge and new technologies with them. The two largest trade routes between Asia and Europe were the northern China route and the Burmese route that lead to the Bay of Bengal. The inhabitants of the Mekong Basin, therefore, were far removed from all this. They didn't benefit from this influx of knowledge, so techniques evolved slowly and remained unchanged for centuries. Bamboo weaving techniques, for example, are unquestionably characteristic of belonging to a community or an ethnic group.
My family uses bamboo canes to make rice baskets, or steaming baskets like this one. Once a month, I distribute them to local shopkeepers. Depending on the demand, they also order chairs, chicken baskets, or fish baskets. So we make them. At the moment, they've only ordered rice baskets from us, and they will all be for local use.
Further south, fish farming is practiced. Here we see local concern over dam projects that exist more or less everywhere along the Mekong's course. Laos alone hopes to build 12 dams in an attempt to fill its economic gap.
I've been doing this job for 15 years now, and I raise only one species of fish, the panga. They need to be fed for 4 months before I can sell them in the local markets. An adult fish can weigh between 1.2 and 1.5 kilos. The government is in the process of building a dam near Sayaburi. We don't know whether the unusual rising and falling of the water level will be to our advantage or not. If the water remains like this, then there won't be too much trouble. It won't greatly affect my work. I'll continue farming fish if the water stays at the same level. But if the Mekong gets too low, I'll have to quit this job.
At sundown, dozens of fishermen gather round these floating wagons and take advantage of the fish attracted by the food that's leaked out of the tanks. During heavy floods, the level of the Mekong can rise by more than 20 meters. The river contains some of the largest species of freshwater fish in the world. The Mekong catfish and the giant stingray can weigh up to 250 kilograms. Over the centuries, they have inspired many tales and legends. Every child is familiar with the tales of these monsters of the Mekong that emerge from the depths to devour them. At certain spots on the river, there are pools of over 100 meters deep, another record for this great river. The Mekong forms the longest border between Laos and Thailand. But these two neighbors who share virtually the same language and the same culture have a difficult relationship. A border conflict known as the War of the Hills has been waged in the north for more than a century. The origin of the dispute concerns the map drawn up by the French colonists at the beginning of the 20th century, demarcating what was then Siam and French Indonesia. It deprived what is now Thailand of a part of the river. The Thais reject the original treaty, which was established against their will, and claim the land up to the banks of the river. As the several hundred kilometers in question present considerable economic opportunities, notably for agriculture and hydroelectric energy, the Mekong is the subject of controversy. Today the situation is stable, but the conflict has long been the cause of clashes between Laotian and Thai armed forces. But commitment to development by both countries compels them to talk about cooperation and development. Demarcation is in progress, but the subject remains a sensitive topic.
In a week, I'll be able to pick my tobacco. I need the Mekong to water the plants. The water means my plants can grow in favorable conditions and be healthy. Without the river, I could never grow tobacco in this field.
Several dams have already been built on the Mekong's tributaries, such as the Nam Theun Dam in Laos and the Pak Mun Dam in Thailand. But projects for building dams on the Mekong itself are very controversial. Downstream, they provoke violent protests from the Vietnamese and Cambodian authorities, who look unfavorably on the damage that these dams could inflict on the environment and the local residents. China has quite a different point of view. It believes that the Mekong should reflect China's image and economic power. As for Thailand, it's trying to smooth its relations with Laos in order to cooperate in building a dam that would meet the electricity needs of both countries. Self-sufficiency is a constant quest in these countries, and tobacco is no exception to the rule.
I grow tobacco for a cigarette factory. Tobacco can be harvested after 3 months. I dry the leaves in a smoke room. Then I sort the good leaves from the bad ones. We wrap them into bundles before we sell them. We manage to produce 1 ton a year. I filled this smoke room with tobacco leaves. I close the door and smoke them for 7 days. Then I sort and bundle them.
Everything is done manually. As investment in costly industrial equipment is impossible, small businesses employ a cheap local workforce. This economic setup is the most widespread along the Mekong. Over the centuries, it has sustained the people and guaranteed them stability. Depending on the supply of tobacco leaves, these seasonal workers only work a few days a week. But their income, as small as it may be, is crucial to their families.
I sort the good leaves like these. I put the bad leaves to one side. Here we grow tobacco for the Thai market.
In Cambodia, the Mekong flows for nearly 500 kilometers and crosses the country from north to south. The Cambodians call it the Tonle, the Great River. During the monsoon, the current is so strong that a portion of the Mekong flows into a branch that feeds Lake Tonle Sap, thus creating a vast natural reservoir. The lake's area is multiplied by 6, increasing from 2,700 square kilometers to 16,000 square kilometers. During the dry season, the flow reverses and water from Lake Tonle Sap then flows into the Mekong. This rare natural hydrological phenomenon works like a safety valve and protects against flooding. As water levels drop, the lake water gives strength and power to the Mekong as it continues its course towards the sea. We're at the end of the dry season. Farmers are anxious to put the last harvests into the barns before the first rains begin.
From January to August, we plant the seeds and 3 months later we pick the pimentos. For 3 months, we drain the water from the plants twice a week. That's about 1,000 liters each time. When the fruit is ripe, we only have a few days to pick it. But if the water from the Tonle Mekong were to be retained by a dam, as it is in Laos, we couldn't grow pimentos. The crop requires us to flood the soil. This makes working the fields easier. If the river doesn't rise, that changes things for us, making our work more difficult. When water floods the fields and then recedes, plants grow in good conditions. You have to let the water rise and recede. If it doesn't rise, you have bad soil. But what to do? Laos certainly knows the right technique for managing water, but we don't know it. All we know is that you have to let the water rise and recede to have good, fertile land. The quality of the land depends on the proper rise in the water level. Without that, the soil is difficult to work and infested with insects and other pests.
Cambodia is slowly recovering from the war that nearly destroyed it. Today, it is totally dependent on the river, both to feed its people and to drive its economy. The annual floods provide precious water to this dry country. Although there are a few passable roads in Cambodia, the river remains by far the most efficient means of transport, for economic reasons as well as for convenience. Wood is also transported on the river. A large part of the population uses it as firewood. According to the most recent studies, wood provides 82% of a Cambodian family's energy needs. It's an inexpensive resource, and thousands of unskilled workers make a living from this activity. This intensive exploitation of wood, however, is not always well managed, and 20% of the country's forest cover has gone up in smoke over the last 25 years. A warning was issued by several NGOs, and the government responded by launching a reforestation program in the most affected areas. Several associations have also implemented alternative solutions to shred this excessive consumption into biofuel.
Using this saw, I get clean cuts ready for resale. It's much better than rough, unsellable cuts. The unsellable cuts are put aside. I'll use them later at home. I don't throw anything away. I can use them for my own daily needs. In the past, it was forbidden to trade in wood, but now it's allowed for small businesses like ours with limited means.
The method of measuring wood used by the producers is rather basic. Two 1-meter-long poles are tied together by a 1.5-meter-long rope to act as a template for sales.
Here I stack the wood by the cubic meter. It will later be sent to another sorting center where it will be sold. A cubic meter can be sold for 4,000, 5,000, up to 10,000 reals. The price depends on the value and the quality when purchased. It might be more, it might be less. It's difficult to say because there are several stages before it's actually sold. There's cutting, cleaning, sorting, and transport to the buyer. It takes some time before you actually receive the money. It's not as simple as all that.
At the moment, my problem is that I'm not getting good quality wood. It comes from poor land and doesn't have any resin in it. No one cares whether I can sell it or not. My supplier delivers by boat a shipment of wood every day. It's difficult to negotiate the price with him in spite of the mediocre quality he delivers. It varies between 9,000 and 10,000 reals. Whether I make money or lose money, it's not his concern. And if I don't buy it from him, he's capable of just dumping it. So even if this wood is poor quality, I have to buy it every day because the people around here need wood every day. I never know in advance what quantity of wood he'll bring. What matters is that he brings it, so we can cut and sell it.
Cambodia was once the heart of the Khmer Empire, whose power influenced all of the Indo-Chinese peninsula from the 9th to the 13th centuries. Today, it's difficult to believe that Cambodia has become the poorest country in Southeast Asia. With a glorious past, this land remains a center for the religious beliefs to which it gave rise. At present, Cambodia's subsistence economy depends entirely on the Mekong and its water.
These pimentos come straight from a nearby field. They're weighed and stocked at home. When I receive them, I remove the stem, then cut them for cooking. Then I let them dry in the sun for 2 days before shipping them off to be packaged somewhere else.
Drying pimentos is carried out in 2 stages. During the first stage, the pepper is placed on bamboo mats where it loses 90% of its water. As it dries, the stem falls off. During the second stage, all the peppers are gathered together and placed on a large tarpaulin for a final drying before they are packed in bags and sold. To escape the conflicts that have agitated the region for decades, millions of Vietnamese families sought refuge on the fertile banks of Tonle Sap. But the Cambodians, who refused to share the land with these foreigners, forced the Vietnamese to set up houses on the water. So over time, these turned into floating towns. There's a considerable demand for boats here, and yet there are few shipyards. The first few settlers who were lucky enough to obtain a plot of dry land jealously guard their share of the market. Their skills are irreplaceable.
I build boats for the people who live here on the banks of the river. They ask me to build for them, anything from a fishing boat or a cargo boat to small boats for daily use. Because of my experience, I can build a boat very quickly and for a reasonable price. 500,000 Khmer riels. It usually takes me about 2 weeks to finish one.
The science of boat building is a family affair. A son will carry on his father's work. Modern power tools make building much easier, and it takes less effort. An appealing argument for the young. Profits have also improved. Before, it took several weeks to finish a single boat. With the population increase, demand has also gone up. Modern production methods make it possible to satisfy this demand.
You are most welcome to visit my house on the water.
Like most of his compatriots, Mr. Van Dien is permitted to live only on the river. His house on the water is shared by his entire family. Even though his business is lucrative, the size of his house is restricted. Regulations and building codes have been established by the authorities in order to better manage this limited space.
I've lived here for a long time. The people of the Mekong have been doing business for many years. They need my services to build their boats. You understand? Living here is practical because we're allowed to farm and sell fish.
Lacking land to farm, the Vietnamese families were inevitably forced to take up fishing. Today, they make their living from the fish trade, and by an irony of fate, they now sell their fish to the Cambodians, who no longer have the right to come and fish in the river. Before it flows into the South China Sea, the Mekong crosses the southern part of Vietnam. Here it divides into 9 branches, creating the legendary Mekong Delta, the Song Kuo Long, which literally means the River of the 9 Dragons. With its many canals and paths where land and water mingle, the Mekong Delta is one of the 3 largest rice-producing areas in Asia, along with Thailand and China. It's one of the largest deltas in the world and is the home of more than 20 million people. The river's silt deposits have made this soil more fertile than anywhere else. Agriculture flourishes here. There is so much water that you can grow anything and everything, even plants that demand a lot of water, like the pepper vine. Peppercorns now bring a substantial income to Vietnam. Here the pepper vines are huge. To reach the fruit, a hair-raising 20-meter bamboo ladder is used. Working at this height is dangerous and requires a lot of experience. As on a boat, you have to keep one hand for holding on. You can pick peppercorns with the other. Not everyone is lucky enough to live by the river and to have plenty of water. Anyone living away from the water's edge has to transport it all the way to the field, a task that is only possible by using ingenious methods.
This pepper vine needs a support as high as this tree so it can climb up it. This tree is called a saku and acts as a support. The peppercorns can be harvested in their 4th year, but are not in full production until the 5th year. We pick them once a year, at the end of the year. I need about a month to do the harvest. In the past, I didn't have water in my field. I had to go 4 kilometers on a moped with a cart to get water. I used tractor inner tubes and filled them up with a water pump. Then I transported them here. That's how we would get water to irrigate my pepper vines. Now they're 16 or 17 years old. That's why they're so big. Watering begins in December during the dry season. When I water, I give them 40 liters every 10 days.
The quality of the peppercorn is judged by its taste, of course, but it can also be evaluated by the odor and the hardness of the grain. The stronger they smell and the harder they are, the better the quality of the pepper.
I've picked these peppercorns from my vines. I cleaned them before spreading them out to dry. They require 3 whole days in the sun before they're dry. When they are dry, I sell them to local traders. They in turn sell them in the city, and from there they go abroad.
Southeast Asia is on the way to its economic miracle, but the prime force here is in fact the will of the people. They learned a long time ago how to make the most out of any resource and to develop ingenious means to exploit it.
This machine works like a fan. It separates the leaves and twigs from the peppercorns. This winnower was handed down to us by my grandfather a long time ago. I also use it for beans, corn, and rice. It works very well to remove leaves, twigs, and dust, leaving only the grains. This machine is used only for that. Every year, I winnow about 2 tons of pepper. I have to use this machine to clean the pepper before packaging and selling it.
This object alone illustrates the paradox of the Mekong shores, a river whose incredible power has not yet produced enough energy for the structural development of the country. Everything is still done by hand, perhaps to compensate for the very frequent power cuts.
Smells good. Right, it's ready.
These young shoots you see were taken from my field. I chose nice, healthy, strong ones. I brought them back here and put them into pots in bags. I water them twice a day. 3 months after the beginning of the rainy season, we'll replant them in the fields to replace the plants that have died.
As far as the eye can see, the Mekong Delta nurtures flourishing agriculture. Irrigated by a dense network of rivers and canals, this half-terrestrial, half-aquatic world sets the pace of life for its inhabitants. At present, navigation is possible in the delta because here the waters are calmer and the currents are not as strong as in the north. There are few dirt roads and motor vehicles cannot be used, so most of the transportation is by canal. Floating markets are everywhere in southern Vietnam. All along the Mekong, there are markets offering the products harvested on the river's banks. Every day, millions of tons of goods are transported on the river. And transport is an essential sector upon which thousands of families depend.
My family works in the local transportation sector. We ship goods by boat. Right now it's the coconut season and we're making deliveries to our clients. My father and mother left early this morning on the Mekong to do the first round of deliveries to the city. It takes several hours on the river to reach it.
This region used to be considered as a swamp and of no interest. The first inhabitants of the delta were Khmers who came from Cambodia. Vietnamese settlers later annexed and reclaimed the area. Their value is a guarantee of the future for the young of today.
I stayed here to help my grandfather and my uncle sort and put the nuts in bundles. Early this afternoon, my uncle will also be making deliveries.
For a long time, Vietnam was under domination by the Chinese, the French, the Japanese, and then the Americans. It suffered greatly from numerous wars and from long periods of submission. But in the 80s, the country recovered, and after having fought foreign domination for so long, it is now seeking foreign investment. Its economy is growing rapidly, and the country is evolving. Everything is being developed. Today, the Mekong supplies food and water for more than 70 million people. Forecasts predict 100 million in 10 years' time. a population explosion that the river will only be able to assume provided that it is well managed and that agreements between the riverine countries it crosses are respected. The Mekong stops here, a few kilometers away from its mouth near the South China Sea. To its very last drop, the river is exploited. Here the Mekong merges with the sea, and these brackish waters are ideal for shrimp farming. So pools are dug and filled with fresh river water. But the river also has a high rate of pollution and requires treatment.
I've emptied the water from this pool to let the earth dry. I've sprinkled a product that will sanitize the water. Next time I fill it, the water will be clean, clear, not cloudy. I pump large amounts of water from the Mekong to feed my shrimp. This Mekong water belongs to Vietnam, and I've been farming shrimp for many years. It's made me successful. With water like this, there's no need to feed them. We just have to pump in the water because it contains all the nourishment the shrimp need. It's clean and healthy. The mouth of the river belongs to Vietnam. I've been living here for many years, and things are going well. This land is ideal for raising shrimp. I'm not the only one doing it. My whole family are shrimp farmers. There are a lot of shrimp pools here. I've heard rumors that they're going to build a dam in Laos. Today, the water is still at the same level. But later, if there is less water, we'll see. For the moment, we can't really say. The water here is perfect. It has everything we need. And there's lots of it, too. For years, I've been using it without worrying about what's happening upstream. The river water is excellent. I've been living here long enough to know. And all this is thanks to the river.
Because it belongs to too many people, until today the Mekong has been spared. It's still the planet's only large free river. But that will not last. China has plans to make its section navigable and has already dredged sandbanks and dynamited rapids. Mr. Nyok doesn't know the details because no one here really talks much about this subject.
Those are aerators. They beat and oxygenate the water over a surface of 2,000 square meters or a volume of 3,000 cubic meters. We raise about 100 shrimp per square meter. They need oxygen for them to grow in favorable conditions. If I didn't have those 3 rows of aerators, raising shrimp wouldn't be possible. Anyone who wants to raise shrimp has to install 3 rows of aerators.
Even if healthy shrimp seem to indicate that all is well, the extent of present human activity on the river is altering the quality of the Mekong water. Notably, the abundant use of harmful substances, insecticides, pesticides, as well as all sorts of chemical products rejected by factories built all along the river. The river people are not aware of these damaging effects. A number of associations trying to protect the Mekong and its inhabitants have implemented awareness and information programs, but the river is suffering from its eternal communication problem, and the message is traveling slowly. Over its long course from the glaciers of Tibet to the South China Sea, the Mekong carries thousands of legends and memories of the countries it has traveled through, all to the rhythm of the rise and fall of its waters. A melting pot of religions, philosophies, and languages, the Mekong remains a major economic issue for one of the most populated regions in the world. Dozens of projects for hydroelectric dams pose a major threat to the river. Apart from any ecological disaster that they might cause, these dams could also create regional political tensions between the countries concerned, depending on whether they are upstream or downstream of the constructions. Populations living on the river cannot conceive of the idea that one day there might be no water or that it might be rationed. But history has taught us that no resource is inexhaustible. As long and as powerful as it is, the Mekong is nonetheless fragile. And 9 dragons might not be enough to protect it.